Morning. Glad to see everybody here. I thought since there's people here from out of town, the first thing we would kind of do is talk about our state parks. When Jerry Winchester and I, the director, came in April, we went on a whirlwind tour to kind of see what the parks were. We hit about 30 parks in 6 days, so that was a lot of windshield time. But for those of you that don't know and that might think that there's just a whole lot of planes and teepees out there, I thought I would kind of start showing you some of the stuff that we have here. This is down in southeast Oklahoma, Beaver's Bend. I won't go over where every single one of them is, but some of the things that you'll see in Oklahoma, people are shocked that this is the kind of natural resources that we have. So for us to be top 10 from a resources standpoint, it was pretty easy because we've got these unbelievable parks out there, these natural resources that a lot of it you won't find anyplace else in the country. That's far western Oklahoma out there by Black Mesa, so it looks like you're out in the middle of Colorado or Utah. We do get winter here, just like some of our neighbors do. And then on the other side, you got these incredible lakes that we have. That's one of the things that we're talking about today. This is down in southwest Oklahoma there. We've got Gloss Mountain, which is a pretty neat facility out there. That's what it looks like from the ground. You'd think you're in Utah or someplace out there. We have these lakes. That's a floating cabin that we have down at Lake Murray. So, which for those of you that don't know, we have an RFP out right now for a new marina vendor. So we're looking for a public-private partnership. Anybody that's interested, see me afterward, and we can make sure you get the RFP. It's been out for a while. Again, Lake Murray there. We have stuff that was built in the 30s by the CCC. We've got 6 parks left that have these incredible cultural, historic resources that are out there that you won't really find anywhere else in the country. We have sand dunes. People don't know that we have Little Sahara out there, so it looks like the Great Salt Flats or something. The things that we have in Oklahoma are just phenomenal as far as state parks go. Natural Falls, that's not too far from here, over by the Arkansas line. We've got, once again, these old facilities that were built in the 30s by the guys who are, Depression era guys that were getting paid $25 a month and had to send home $20 of it, right? We've got mountains. People don't realize they're not necessarily high Rocky Mountains, but if you were from Pennsylvania, you could think that this looks just like home. And we've even got stuff that looks like Missouri, because I know there's some Missouri guys here today. So anyway, we've got a lot of natural resources, and that's what we saw. That's what we saw when we went on this tour. But what Senator Learight asked us to talk about is kind of where we are in Oklahoma State Parks, because we've got those incredible natural resources. That's our tour. Kind of shows you where a lot of those parks are. But we went out to see what there was, and we saw all those natural resources, but we also saw a lot of improvements that we had made over the past 70 to 80 years in those parks. So some of them are phenomenal. We've got these lodges. That second row there on the left-hand side is a brand new lodge that we built at Lake Murray. We've got lodges and public structures. We've got priceless, handmade, historic features that don't exist anywhere else in the country. We've got cabins, specialty lodges, golf courses. We've got swimming pools. We've got vehicles, bridges, dams, signs. It's just hard to believe how much stuff we have at the state parks. To give you some idea, we have about 60,000 acres of state parks, about 1.5 million square feet of enclosed space in about 500 buildings. We've got thousands of pieces of furniture, hundreds of vehicles. We've got golf courses. We've got hundreds of miles of roads. We've got 5.3 million square feet of parking lots. So it's just a gigantic system that we've got out there. We even own 5 dams, and we control about 10,000 acres of forest out there. So as great as those natural resources that we saw, what we found from the improvements was something that wasn't that at all. What we found was a few shining gems, like the Lake Murray Lodge. And those stood out in an abundance of just below average. I mean, if you looked at what we generally had out there, it was below average. And that was kind of surrounded by a sea of neglect and disrepair. These things have deteriorated decade after decade after decade to where there's hardly, a lot of them are not usable anymore, and a lot of them have had deferred maintenance for 20, 30, 40 years. So one of the things we looked at is how did we get here? Well, we got here 1 year at a time, and we kind of did the math to show, that top line says if something starts out here and it requires maintenance, which virtually every man-made facility requires maintenance, if you start out at 99% spend of what you need to maintain that, then after 13 or 14 years, you're a little bit below 90%. If you spend 95% of what you should have spent on that asset, then after 13 years, you're less than half of what it should be. And if you spend 90%, which people say, oh, well, that's an A. Well, in the maintenance world, if you spend 90%, then after 7 years, it's less than half utility. And after 14 years, you're less than 25%. And I don't think that we would argue that we've had even 90% spent on the state parks over the years. So when we came in April, we decided we were going to change that. The first thing we did was put together a strategy that says, what do we need to do? Well, we need to think strategically and not think about it as 30 different parks that were out there with all those assets. We need to think about it as one gigantic system. So we actually sat down and defined, here's what we do, here's what we have. We have state parks, which were the original things that we built back in the 30s with a couple of others. We have these natural heritage areas, which are not necessarily something as historic, but they're things that may not exist anywhere else in the country, like Alabaster Caverns is a cavern that we have in western Oklahoma that has black alabaster, I guess, that doesn't exist except for like 1 or 2 places in the world except for here. And then we had all these recreation areas, lakes, like Skytook Lake, although this is not ours, but places where people come to spend time outdoors. And the other thing that we said is we need to define what it is that we do, because we had golf courses and marinas, and we have equestrian trails, we have all this stuff. So we had to simplify it. And so what we came up with is that we conserve natural resources and we provide access to outdoor recreation. And so in a business, if that's what our mission is, then we need to start looking at, all right, how do we meet that mission and start trying to figure out what things that we do we not need to be doing because that's not core to our mission. So we really said the first thing that we had to do is define some sort of a maintenance cycle. We had to say, all right, here's every single type of asset that we own. We made every one of these lists, if you could read it, which you probably can't, but it says like lodge, cabins, tents, yurts, all the way down through, comfort stations, boat ramps, landscaping, vegetation, forest, dams. We went through every single thing that we could possibly own, and we figured out how long should that thing last, and we said we're going to put that on a maintenance cycle. So moving to cyclical maintenance is what we defined it was going to take to get off of that decline curve. We've been declining for decades, and if we were going to be top 10, think of those original pictures. We actually have the natural resources to be top 10. We just need to take all the man-made stuff and improve it back to where it's on par with our natural resources. So what we said to the legislators and to the governor is what we need to do is we need to spend money on annual maintenance. We need to spend money on annual upgrades because we're going to arrest the decline where it is today. We're not going to let anything decline worse than it is. If we can't stop it from declining, we're just going to get rid of it, either abandon it or tear it down or whatever it takes. And then we're going to start gradually upgrading year after year to where everything is getting better. So it's not just stopped in place because a lot of it's pretty bad, but we're going to go through and do annual upgrades. And the last thing that we're going to do is denominator reductions. Kind of think about that mission that we had. Some of the things that we do today as a state park system, they don't contribute to that mission. There's something that got added along the way, and maybe they made sense in the 50s and 60s, but they don't necessarily make sense today. So we're going to have to get rid of some of the things that we do. There's just no way the math is going to work if we don't do that. The other thing that we started doing was cultural change. We started basically saying we need everybody to start thinking about things as a park system. This is an investment that the state of Oklahoma has made. We calculated the value of what we had out there is about $1 billion of improvements at these state parks. So we've made this investment, and we need to start thinking about it as a system. We're not here to do political favors to somebody to keep their park open, or to keep their golf course open, or to do things that people desperately want to do because it's in their district. We understand that, but there's hard decisions that got to be made because the math that got us here took 40 and 50 years sometimes. So we're trying to make those hard decisions, but we said we're going to need to make cultural change within our organization and within the organizations that we work with. So we set forth these philosophies and standard processes and all of that. Basically the same thing that you would do if you were running a business. To kind of give you some idea of what that means, we spend about $33 million a year in the state park system, just on operations, keeping the doors open and keeping things running. We generate about $26 million of that, and the state appropriations, they give us about $7 million. So that's kind of what every Oklahoman is paying in order to keep those parks open. On the capital side of things, we were getting roughly $12 million a year of, $10 million of that was tax money, and then there was about $2 million of other grants and other funds that we had. So that was kind of what we were spending: $33 million on operations, $12 million on maintenance. I'm sorry, on capital. And what we presented recently to the legislators, okay, if we keep doing $12 million a year, then it's death by 1,000 cuts. Everything is getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Or we can decide we want to keep the whole thing open. We can put ourselves on a wellness program, which is going to take us about $40 million a year. So somehow we need $28 million a year more in order to make this work. That $40 million a year, a lot of it is stuff you might never see. I mean, we've got millions of feet of sewage lines. We've got hundreds of sewage lagoons. We've got water lines. We've got, like I say, lakes and vegetation. We've just got phenomenal amount of infrastructure out there in these parks. So a lot of that you would never see, but we need $12 million a year to keep it up. Otherwise, it's just gonna go away. We've got lodging, in addition to the cabins that we have, which a lot of you are familiar with. We have the lodges, but we also have thousands of RV camping areas. We have thousands of tent camping areas. So all of this money right here is what it's going to take to keep everything working, which I can tell you that when we presented this to the legislatures, they were a little shocked. But we said, well, the good news is, there you see it in the waterfall chart. The good news is that we can actually raise, I thought I had one more slide, but I guess I don't. We can actually raise quite a bit of this money ourselves. So we need an additional $28 million to get up there. What we showed them is that we can raise about 16 or 17 million of that ourselves by some of the things that we were doing at the parks. We believe visitation, we've put in a reservation system recently that allows you to reserve your camping spots out at the park. We've instituted dynamic pricing like just about any other hotel in the country. The pricing changes based on the number of people that are booking it, and the more people that book, the more that prices start going up. So we've made a lot of changes, and we think that we can get about another 16 million or so just out of the things that we're doing. And so now we only have like a $12 million shortfall, $11 million shortfall to get to that $40 million. That's where maybe some of the people in this room can help, because we are looking for public-private partnerships. That's kind of hard to say. Public-private partnerships that will make the parks more attractive and bring in more visitors. We get about 9.3 million visitors a year at Oklahoma State Parks. We want to be growing that somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 visitors a year or so. Some of them are naturally growing. Our southern parks, Lake Murray, Robbers Cave, Beavers Bend, are growing just because the population of Texas, North Texas, is growing, and those people come north to our parks. But what we also need is we need some help getting all that infrastructure that we've built and all those things that we've built over the years. We can't afford to go out and do everything in 1 year. So like one of the things I was saying earlier, we think a new marina at Lake Murray would significantly improve the guest experience for those people that like to boat and those people that like to be on the water. So that's a public-private partnership. We've got a public-private partnership underway that's going to help us with our entry fees. We're actually going to start, we're one of the few states that doesn't charge entry fees. We are going to start charging entry fees. And we have somebody that's doing a public-private partnership to provide us with all of that infrastructure that it takes, so that it's just like the turnpike. You can drive by and it's just going to charge your car for coming into the park. We have, I don't know, 5 or 6 other marinas that are public-private partnerships. We have a variety of equestrian partners that work with us. We're kind of looking for anyone in this group or anyone else to say, all right, Oklahoma has these parks, what could we do to help? Because we're not necessarily interested in making a whole lot of money off these partnerships. What we're interested in doing is making it a better experience for the visitor. If we have a nice marina, if we have nice equestrian resources there, a barn and a place for you to store your horses, then we don't necessarily make a lot of money off that, but what we have is happier guests. Because in addition to top 10, for our agency at least, one of the things the new governor said is, okay, how do you define that? Well, we defined it as the top 2 boxes that the person is checking. Out of 5 stars, we're either a 4-star or a 5-star experience at those parks. And so we're way open to people saying, hey, if you guys were interested, I'd be interested in doing something like this at one of your parks. I mean, this venue is the perfect example. You know, we could possibly have venues like this at some of our parks. If somebody was interested in building them, we'd be interested in discussing a concession agreement with you to do something like that. So that's kind of where we are right now in the state parks. We believe we have a path. We believe we have a path to get where we were going. You know, our goal was to get off of that decline curve, which we've now defined a strategy to do that. One of the ways that we're doing that is we're thinking of the park as a system and not just an individual park. And we're interested not in, we're thinking about health and not just a hospice where we're going to die by 1,000 cuts by not having enough money. We're generating more revenue, we're cutting expenses, but basically we're down to, we need a bigger numerator and we need a smaller denominator, and you guys can help us do that by proposing things where you think that it would be a good business opportunity for you, and it would be a great opportunity for us to improve the guest experience.